our Noble County. It is Tuesday, June 16th, 2020, and as promised, today on the live stream we are going to discuss milkweed and hemp dogbane. Those are two really common weeds that you will find are prevalent in our county and along roadsides nearby right now. Now let's dive in to today's topic about the weeds. So decided that this will be Weeds Week. There's lots of weeds out and prevalent right now, and one that we're getting lots of questions about right now is hemp dogbane. And if you watched the live stream yesterday, we did come across some hemp dogbane where I was showing how to take a weed sample and how to send pictures in if you need additional help with identification, and stumbled upon some. I was hoping I didn't have any at my house, but in fact I do. And then I just drove down the road a tiny ways this morning to pick up some milkweed. So I have both here to show you and look at differences between the two and also similarities. There's obvious reasons why they're commonly confused. So let me grab those plants for you. What I have here are 3 of each of the plants in a mug. So that I kept them hydrated. So just looking at this cluster of weeds, I bet it's already kind of hard to see that there's 2 different kinds in the same cup. But once we start to look at them a little closer, those differences will be more apparent. So let's start with the hemp dogbane. We did see this weed yesterday. Let me move this container back again. So taking a look at the hemp dogbane, they will grow similar heights. Milkweed and dogbane will both commonly be between 3 to 5 feet tall. So if I set this on the ground, it's, about 3/4 of my height. This one is hemp dogbane. As you get really used to looking at these weeds, you will see them everywhere, and it will be easy to tell from the driver's seat of your car if you have hemp dogbane or if you have milkweed. But when they are little seedlings, it can be difficult to tell the difference, and after mowing, it can become a little more difficult as well, because one of the easiest ways to tell the difference is the branching habit of hemp dogbane. So hemp dogbane will have multiple branches splitting off with alternate leaves. So opposite leaves. So opposite means they're directly across from one another. Alternate means they're staggered. So, but both milkweed and dogbane have opposite leaves. But what's different is that these oppositely arranged leaves are on their own branch off of the main stem. Milkweed will have one leaf off of the main stem, not a branch, but it will have opposite arranged leaves. I will show you them. Bethany is calling for me. I told her I was coming outside. What, honey? You come out here. You come out here. So these are the leaves, but it's that branching habit that makes it really obvious that this is hemp dogbane. The other thing is that the stems are a lot more thin milkweed, and often they will be reddish to purple. You can tell on this one, if I hold it against my shirt, that this is beginning to purple. The more mature it gets, the more purple it will get. But it really just takes some familiarity with the two to recognize the difference right off. Let me take a milkweed plant out for you here. This one is starting to get a flower on it. Now, in comparison, when looking at the two, you can see that clearly these are not the same, but they have very similar characteristics. And if you don't have the two right next to each other, it can be additionally challenging to know which is which. So let's take a look at the milkweed plant. You'll notice that this one has some speckling on the stem, but it's not nearly as reddish to purple colored. It has opposite leaves. Again, they're arranged directly across from each other. However, this is one main stem with one set of leaves branching off at a time. You can see that there are buds here at the nodes. It is common for milkweed to branch after it has been mowed. So the branching alone is not always enough to distinguish the difference between milkweed and hemp dogbane. but if you have them right next to each other, you can distinguish that the leaves of milkweed are substantially larger. They have very similar shapes and venation, where the vein is, and again, they're arranged oppositely, just like hemp dogbane, but the stem is much thicker and the leaves are clustered much more to the main stem than on branches. You can take a look. This one is beginning to develop a flower. Now, there will be arguments about whether milkweed is a flower or it is a weed, and that really depends on what type of production system you have. If you are a hay producer or a grazier, this is a weed. You can be friendly to pollinators and to your livestock at the same time if you are thoughtful about how you manage these weeds. Both milkweed and hemp dogbane are considered poisonous to ruminant livestock, and monogastrics as well, but we typically don't see as many issues with them because we're not feeding them dried forage. The sap that is inside both the milkweed and the hemp dogbane plants is poisonous even if it is dried, not just fresh but also dried. And actually the most toxic parts of these plants are the seeds and the roots, but all parts of the plant can create issues with poisonings in livestock. So if you are harvesting this in your hay by accident and your animals don't have the ability to sort it out, especially so if it's chopped, they're not going to be able to sort that out. If you are making long fibered hay, they may be able to sort it out more easily, but as a manager, you're going to want them to clean up that bunk. So be aware that if you have an infestation of milkweed and hemp dogbane or one or the other, and you can't help but harvest a little bit, don't push those livestock too much to clean up the feed bunk when you feed that hay, because they will be trying to sort this out. They do not want to eat this. Issues with poisonings are usually a result of overgrazing or underfeeding. So in both cases, the livestock are hungry and they are desperate for something to eat. So they eat things that are not good for them. So we, as managers, have the power to keep that from happening. In a grazing situation, it's not that dire because the livestock have the ability to pick and choose what they're going to eat. And if they're familiar with the space, they have the experience of being among other animals and observing their grazing patterns, they should know not to eat this. And they will not eat it unless there are no other options. With harvested forages, it's different, right? Because we are collecting the forage and bringing it to them. They have fewer options of what they have to eat. They will sort it out if they are able, and that's going to reduce the likelihood that you'll have poisonings. But this is certainly, both of these weeds are not something we want in our pastures, but especially our hay fields. And we are seeing lots and lots and lots of hemp dogbane. So to put them again side by side, this is a different plant than before. I picked a few that were different growth stages so that you could compare. This one I chose because it had the flower head developing on it. You can see by the size of the stems that hemp dogbane is much smaller stemmed than milkweed, but that will change depending on the environment that you're in. If the plant is very happy there, it's going to have thicker stems. But at this growth stage, like today, this is what you should be seeing, is that hemp dogbane will be widely branched, multiple branches off the main stem with alternate leaves on the branches as well as on the main stem, but milkweed is going to have opposite leaves coming directly off the main stem. There's likely not going to be much branching. The branching on milkweed will increase if you've already mowed it and it's trying to grow back, because it's going to grow back from those auxiliary buds that are on the sides and try to create a new main stem. Let's look at a couple more of these for observation. So I think this is the first one that I showed you. It has the most branching on it. If this is what you see, it's pretty easy. But if this is what you see, it's a lot more challenging. Now, I mentioned before that there are going to be arguments about whether milkweed is a weed or if it is a flower. And of course, milkweed is the forage that monarch butterflies need as they migrate through our area. And if there's no milkweed for them to feed on, then we have that loss of habitat for monarchs. There are other pollinators that enjoy the flowers of milkweed as well. So I'm not suggesting that we completely eradicate these from our ecosystems, but we do need to be cognizant of where they are occurring. If you are a pollinator enthusiast and you want to keep some of the milkweed for the monarchs, excellent. But keep it in a designated area away from your hay and your pasture ground. The things that are challenging with both these weeds are that they spread both by roots. They are perennial weeds, so they come back multiple years from the same roots. They have spreading roots. So both hemp dogbane and milkweed will spread in a common area. They also produce fluffy seed that's transported by the wind. There are differences in the seed pods between milkweed and hemp dogbane. So if you get that late in the season before you identify it and decide what you want to do. The milkweed pods are shaped like a teardrop. The hemp dogbane seed pods are shaped more like a bean. It's a thinner, longer seed pod. Whereas the milkweed is shaped like a teardrop, and it will crack open on the side and have fluffy seed that bursts out. So seed dispersal is aided by the wind, also by transport in machinery, and it also spreads by the roots. So knowing that it is a perennial weed that has multiple ways of reproduction, it makes it a bit challenging for us to treat to get complete control. It will take multiple years to get complete control of either of these weeds, either milkweed or hemp dogbane. And the reason why it takes multiple years is, again, because it has those reserves of nutrients in the roots. And if we don't kill the root completely, the plant is going to sprout back from that root tissue. The other challenge is the seed. So the seed is widely distributed by the wind. We can't control where the wind blows. So even if you get yours completely under control, if your neighbor doesn't have theirs under control, and this could be miles away, it could blow back into your system and create issues again. The seed, as well, can remain viable in the soil for multiple years. So you will continually have new seed germinate for multiple years and have new seedlings come up. So nothing that you do to control weed growth on either of these plants is going to eradicate it in year one. It's going to take multiple years of treatment. So again, if you're trying to play happy as a livestock producer or hay producer, and as a pollinator enthusiast, isolate patches of milkweed. Not hemp dogbane. This is not helpful for monarchs. Yes, there are pollinators that will visit the flowers of it, but it's not the plant that you'll see advocated for monarch butterflies. I do not have mercy for hemp dogbane. I do have some mercy for milkweed if it's in an appropriate place, but this should not be in your hay. So what happens if it does get in your hay, or you're listening to this video right now and you're like, oh no, I baled a bunch of that last week. What do I do? Well, again, make sure that you're offering the hay when it's fed in a manner that the animals can sort it out. It's not that the entire hay bale will be seeped with toxins from the milky sap of these plants. It's the plant itself. It is toxic, dry, or fresh. So you want to be able to allow the animals to sort it out of that hay. Don't expect them to clean it all up. And then if you're able to gather up the residue and dispose of it, rather than letting it lay on the ground in your pasture, you could inevitably be introducing seed that way. Clearly, these plants don't have seed developed on them yet, but in your second or third cutting hay, if you're fortunate to get third cutting, that could certainly be a problem. So you want to allow the animals to sort through it so that they don't consume it. Some symptomology of poisoning, if it is consumed by livestock, the most common ones are diarrhea and vomiting. It can lead to death, but that's usually pretty severe. And again, that's going to primarily be a result of overgrazing or underfeeding. Both cases, hungry animals eating things they shouldn't. So don't get yourself into that situation. If you notice that you have a bunch of this in a pasture and you have an animal that's struggling with vomiting, diarrhea, colic, if they're listless, they're they're just like off in la la land, not making focus with the eyes, wandering. Those can be signs as well that something's wrong. Or it could be extremely minor. They ate a few leaves, they got an upset stomach, and then they left it alone, and you never even notice. But those are the critical signs to watch out for if you think you're having an issue with poisoning, is diarrhea and vomiting. The same would be true for people. I don't know of anybody that's tried to eat milkweed. The sap of milkweed and hemp dogbane, they both have milky sap that can be irritating to the skin, and it is sticky. Let me see if I can get it to bleed for you. See that milky sap coming out? That can cause skin irritation for some people. It's certainly not tasty, and it's very sticky, so it can be really hard to get off of your skin and also off of your equipment. That's how it gets the name milkweed. Hemp dogbane also produces a milky sap, so avoid getting this on your skin. You can treat with a herbicide, or you can hand pull. But again, this has an extensive root system, so it's likely that even if you hand pull it, you're not going to get the entire root out, and you'll still have some issues. So probably the best thing, I just got the sap on me, the best thing to do is to use a combination of strategic mowing, herbicide use, and cultural control, which is just trying to keep from bringing more in on accident. When it comes to applying herbicides to these plants, it depends on which herbicide you're planning to use and how big the plant is. In general, you will get better control with a herbicide when the plants are small, and we're talking seedlings like 6 inches tall. If you're going to use the product 2,4-D, it actually works better on plants that are mature, so this size, okay, if this is your hemp dogbane, 2,4-D will do a good job on this sized plant, but it doesn't do as good a job on the seedlings. However, the herbicide that we prefer for both of these, that has the best rating for both plants, is Remedy Ultra, which is triclopyr. And that has best effect on smaller plants. So depending on what you have available and your management protocol, either one, 2,4-D or triclopyr, can be helpful for you in your system. Roundup, glyphosate, it works as well, but remember that that's a broad spectrum herbicide and it will kill everything that you get it on. The 2,4-D product, the Remedy Ultra product, those are selective herbicides that kill broadleaf plants. So if you do spray that with a boom sprayer, you will kill your clovers as well, but they'll likely rebound, or you can add them back in frost seeding. And you can consider the use of glyphosate Roundup using something like a weed wiper or spot spraying it. It's pretty effective as well. Just make sure you follow all of the restrictions that are listed on the label and that you're wearing appropriate protective coverings for yourself. When used in accordance to the labels, pesticides are safe, economical ways to control weeds. I would do both the combination of strategic mowing to keep the spread of the weeds under control and out of the areas that you consider production sites, and the use of herbicides, preferably selective herbicides so you don't kill your entire stand and have to start over, and then keeping in mind where does seed come from and how does it get here, and trying everything you can do to prevent the movement of seed. So, one last thing that I wanted to do before I let you guys go is measure how big the leaves are. Beth, I'm almost done. Okay. Got a tape measure here. We'll just compare the size of the leaves. I'm almost done, honey. So this leaf here is about 7 inches in length and 4 inches in diameter. And that's exactly what they list in the weed books, is leaves that are 7 to 9 inches in length and 4 to 5 inches in diameter. But when you look at hemp dogbane leaves, they are significantly smaller. If we look at the same location on the plant, and I would assume these are about the same age based on their growth habit, its leaves are 4.5 inches in length and 2 inches in diameter. So significantly smaller. And again, we can look at the size of the stem, maybe 1/4 of an inch. That was the hemp dogbane versus the milkweed, which is much closer to 1/2 an inch. So about double the stem diameter. Neither one do you want in your hay or your grazing situation. Again, if you're into pollinators, the milkweed one, sure, go ahead and keep it, but try to keep it isolated to what you would consider your pollinator area so that it doesn't cause other unintentional residual damages. Poisonings from these weeds are relatively rare if you are aware that they are present and know how to deal with them. Do not force animals to graze the area down. Do not force them to completely clean out the feed bunk if you know that you have either one of these weeds in your systems. That's where you're going to get into trouble with poisonings.